Thanks for checking out this app. In this first video, I'm going to show you how to set up the TA for blocking IP addresses on your Checkpoint firewall. And in the next video, we'll go over how to use the app. To get started, you're going to go into your Splunk apps configuration and manage the apps. And we'll install the app. You could be doing this directly through Splunk base, or you could be doing it through a file. In this case, I'm going to install the app from a file since I already have it downloaded. Go ahead and do that. And you will be prompted to restart Splunk once this is taken care of. So go ahead and restart Splunk and let that run. While that's running, we want to gather a couple pieces of information from our Checkpoint firewalls. First, we need to make sure that the API is ready to use. So to do that, we're going to log into our firewall, and we'll run the command API status. And we'll see that the API is started and that it's running on port 443. And we also see that the management server is running and ready, and that the accessibility is set to require all granted, which gives us the permissions we need to be able to access that from basically GUI client locations. If any of these things look different, you may need to look at your settings in the Checkpoint API to make sure that it's remotely accessible. If it is not remotely accessible or not running, this will not work. But since we see that that's running, we also want to have available the host name of our management server. Now that Splunk is restarted, I'm going to log back into Splunk. And you'll be prompted to set up the app. So we'll click Setup Now to do that. This is where we specify the setup for the firewall that we're looking to configure the blocking on. The username needs to be a user that's allowed to interact with the API. In this case, I'm going to use a user that has that permission called fwadmin, and I'll enter the password. Next, we need to specify the management server IP address and port that we're going to use to access the system from our Splunk environment. This needs to be entered in the format of the IP address and a colon and the API port. If you're using default settings, the API is probably running on 443. So in this case, I'm going to enter the IP address of the firewall with the port. Now this will support more than one firewall. So if you have more than one management server where you're going to be doing this blocking, say if you have multiple management servers, a DR site, or a production environment, you can do that by specifying a comma and entering another address like such. In this case, I only have one, so I don't need to have the comma. By default, when you're running this command against a management server, every firewall that reports to that management server and is managed by that management server will have the block command executed across it. So if you typically just have one management server and a couple firewalls, having the management server here will be sufficient to have an IP address blocked at all of your firewalls. For the next field, we'll want to put the host name of the device. In that case, that's the name that is displayed, as we saw earlier within Smart Dashboard. So in this case, CCN FW01. Likewise, if you have more than one, you would specify a comma and have a second one. It's important to note that if there is multiple systems listed, they need to be in the same order in both of these boxes as you go across. Now, as you add multiple firewalls, you just need to make sure the IP address and the name correspond. Finally, you want to specify the default time in seconds to block the IP address. So in this case, if I want to block an IP address for an hour, I would put 3600 seconds. At this point, we click Save, and you are all ready to use the app. If at any point you want to make any configuration changes, just search for block and go back to the setup page, and you can modify the settings by adding additional devices or changing the block time. So hopefully that's enough information to get you started with this. In the next video, we'll show you how to actually use this app. Thanks for watching. Welcome back. In this next video, I'm going to show you how to use the Checkpoint TA for blocking IP addresses. There's two ways to use this app. One is within any sort of search result as a workflow action, and then also to use it in enterprise security as an adaptive response action. So we'll start by using the workflow action approach. I'm going to just run a quick search in our environment that will return something with IP addresses so that I can demonstrate that. So we can simply just go for OPSEC logs, which are checkpoint firewalls, in this lab environment, and we'll get some results that come back. And I'm just going to pick the first result here and decide that this destination is something that we don't want to have. If we scroll over to our workflow action section, we'll be able to see there's issue a block command of the IP address to configure checkpoint system. So to do so, we just click on this and it opens up a new tab. And we'll be prompted that we're going to run a command. You can either just run it or you can hit investigate. I'll hit investigate so I can show you it's running a send alert command with the command to block the firewall or block this specific IP address. Go ahead and run that. I'm going to switch over to our Smart Console so that you can see at the bottom we had a FWSAM that was executed successfully. Also, if we go into Smart View Monitor and refresh our FWSAM roles, we'll see that this is successfully applied, and we had this set to this 3600 seconds, so it's going to be valid for the next hour. I'm just going to go ahead and remove all of those right now so that's not stuck in there. Next, in enterprise security, we have a workflow action. So let's go to incident review in enterprise security so that we can see how we would use this on a notable event. So we'll load up incident review, and we'll pick one of these excessive DNS queries, and let's decide that we don't want this host to be making excessive DNS queries. So we can go to the actions dropdown, and we don't want to use this workflow action. We actually want to use run adaptive response actions. And then we just click add a new adaptive response action, and we'll click block an IP address. And we can specify the field containing what we want to block. So in this case, the source is what we want to block. And we can specify how long we want to block it. So let's just say in this case, we want to block it for 600 seconds. Let's go ahead and run that. And we'll see that that has been dispatched. If we go back to our firewall, we'll see that another FWSAM was completed. And in Smart View Monitor, we'll see that that block is there.